Mona Lee with Beautiful Mind, and we are here with our podcast, Spiritual Vacancy, here to fill your spiritual void and talk about everything spiritual in different ways that come up in discussion. And I'm so excited to be here with my dear.
I am Brooke Ann. I'm a psychic medium and a Reiki practitioner, and I'm excited to be here too for our weekly meeting. And what are we talking about today?
Oh my goodness. Well, it was like when we stopped recording our last episode of Death Doula, we had so much in conversation that started coming up. And even while you were talking about how on death, right? On death and passing away, and how do we feel about that and what's going to be happening, what does happen? Like, for example, about the accidents that people get into when they pass on that last episode. And it just branched into a whole big conversation of death and how we feel about it. So I am just so excited to have that wide open discussion about death and dying.
Yeah, because we were talking about a lot of people are scared to die.
Yeah.
And I don't think people are actually scared of dying, they're scared of missing out. They're scared of leaving their loved ones. How are they going to be when they're not here? They can't touch them, they can't feel them. And where do they go when they pass? Because as we know, being spiritual practitioners, they're right next to us. They have a seat at the table. They're not in the sky in heaven, and they're not down below in hell, as some people call it. And they're near. They don't go anywhere. They're just in a different form.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is something that's interesting, that sometimes when I'm doing my work and my spirit work with people and I can feel their loved one nearby, I can feel the angel bumps and I can feel the presence of them. And that love is just absolutely amazing. So it is good to know that our loved ones don't leave. And I remember one day in my living room, you were asking if, well, would you like me to do a reading? This was years ago before you started coming out of that spiritual closet about being a psychic medium. And my oldest brother who had passed had showed up, and he literally, when he had passed, just like you mentioned in our last episode about Death Doula, that when our loved ones pass in an accident, right, they don't feel anything, but they end up just like leaving their bodies, their spirits leave their bodies, and they're just kind of there. And that actually happened with my oldest brother. When he had passed, he was in Thailand coming home from work, called his wife, who just had their newborn baby, and said, "Okay, honey, I'm on my way home. I'm leaving work now." And he got decapitated, and in a very sudden accident. However, it wasn't a terrible thing because he didn't remember it. Of course, his body, his soul had left his body, and he actually went to my uncle's house. And he knocked on my uncle's door. My uncle in Thailand, in Bangkok, he lives in this alleyway that you have to go through a gate before you have to go into a gate. And he went into the gate at my uncle's, and the person who answered the door was surprised that my brother's soul was there, but he was like she said, described that he was covered in like a robe type of thing. But when she answered the door, she said, "Well, what are you doing?" And his soul said, "Well, I just had a baby. Can you please take care of my baby? Tell my uncle to help take care of the baby." And his soul was there. He was gone. So.
And that was right after he passed?
Right after he passed. Yes.
To let
Yes.
him
Right
know
after
that
he
he's
passed.
okay.
Yes. And even at the funeral, when my other brother was at the funeral of my mother, and his casket he was getting cremated. And in that ceremony, they were sitting down in the funeral area, and my cousin, Petawan, was there. And all of a sudden she felt this big tap on the back of her head, because our older brother was a jokester and he would tap on the back of the head. And she looked around like, what are you doing? To my brother nearby, and he's like, I didn't touch you. And it was brother in spirit that was there, just being the jokester that he was on this earth plane. So it's funny, they have their same personalities. You find that when you're doing readings for people, right?
Oh, they don't change. They're
Yeah.
exactly who they were in this life, because I always say, if they're different, then you wouldn't understand who it was.
Yes.
They're the same soul, they just don't have the hard body anymore. But it does give a little reassurance of like being able to feel your loved ones after they pass, or know that they're there, or know that they didn't suffer. Because that's one of the biggest things is not only sometimes with our loved ones, like with Cindy, she actually gets to be a part of them taking their last breath. And that's super emotional, and watching them transition and knowing they're going to a different place than from when somebody loses somebody in a traumatic, unexpected way. You have the loved one wondering, did they suffer? Are they okay? Did they feel the pain? Did they, was it agonizing before they left? And in my experience, it never has been, because their soul leaves their body before impact, before something, happens to them. They're already, your other loved ones are already like snatching their soul out to help them cross over where they don't experience that pain.
Yes.
And if that makes it any easier for anybody listening that's lost a loved one in a traumatic way or in any way really, is
Mhm.
to know that they're okay. And
Mhm.
that's even with by suicide or passing by their own hand. There is like, I don't believe in purgatory. I don't believe in like lower level. I believe that that person really has a lot of mental anguish going on in this life. And whether it's by man-made, substances, or their own, demons they're fighting in their mind, things like that. But they don't go to a dark place. They don't go to this negative space. Usually what comes through after they pass is that they're free, that they're
Mm.
free of their own thoughts. They're free of their own restrictions. They're free of their own mind. And
Mhm.
sometimes going through life, that can be really hard to overcome for some people. And
Mm.
they place harm on themselves.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but I've never met anybody that didn't come through, that wasn't at peace or wasn't okay. Like,
Mhm.
are you afraid of dying, Mona? Are you afraid of that
You
process?
know, I'm actually, and I don't know if it's because I've done so many forward life regressions and past life regressions and experiencing astral projection that I've been practicing for the last, probably 5 years. I've been really practicing hard on astral projection, lucid dreaming, analyzing all of those things. But I feel like I've seen the other side, I've experienced the other side or another realm. And I know it sounds crazy,
No.
but I am excited to die. I'm excited to, well, I don't want to say that like in a morbid way, but
Right,
I'm
right.
excited to look at what is on the other side. It just seems like it's just going to be so exciting. However, I know that there's so many people that are so afraid, like you were mentioning earlier in the beginning of this recording, that people are afraid to leave their loved ones behind. And that's the biggest thing that I worry about is like, did I get my will written out that I don't want to be plugged into a machine if something were to happen? Or do I have my file cabinets in order so that when I pass, my children can see, where the bills are, where the stuff is, and how to organize that? Do I have all my little closets cleaned out just in case I don't have a big mess for people to have to clean up when I'm gone? Those are the silly things that I think about.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm looking forward to seeing, okay, what is it going to be like? Because I think I've been training my head and my mind to find that peace to where when anything happens that it's a stressful situation, like what if we have a big tsunami that hits us in Myrtle Beach? Who knows?
Right, right.
I want to be able to be in that place of peace and calm because of all the discussions that we've had about crossing over, about passing, and just making sure it's in a calm place, in a calm state.
Yeah.
But it's
I think that's a
I don't
great
know.
way to look at it, especially for people listening that might be scared of passing away or things happening, because I know for like the longest time I was scared of dying. And
Mhm.
then, you see for me, I get to see the other perspective of it that a lot of people can't fathom or can't imagine or can't understand. But then I also feel like a lot of times people's perception of death once they have children changes, where prior to children, I find this a lot, you don't care, live free, like, you're a, what do you call that? Like a risk
Free spirit.
taker, a wild person. And then when you have a child, you now have anxiety. You now are scared of death. There's so much more protection around yourself because now you worry about how could your child survive without you, which I think that's awful, whether you lose a child or a parent, before their time. Like, it's hard for me to even fathom because I don't have the answers on why. But I
Mhm.
do feel like sometimes it kind of changes your perspective a little bit when you have little humans depending on you, you
Yes.
know?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's also another thing to think about too, is that, do we have all of our affairs in order? Do we have our things ready? I mean, are we prepared?
I'm
Because
not.
you never know when something happens, but then those are things to bring awareness to. Bring in the awareness, like what are the fears? What are we afraid of?
Right.
And see what we can do to better face those fears. What do we have to put in order to feel organized and ready? Or how can we better prepare our children to survive this earth so that if anything were to happen to
Right.
us and we have to unfortunately leave our children at an early time, how can they be best prepared to be taking care of themselves rather than like, am I enabling my child too much? Would she be able to survive if I were gone? Can she get herself up? Can she cook? Can she take care of responsibilities?
Right.
Those are things to really, really be real with and face.
Definitely. And have a
Yeah.
will and have things in place. Like, I don't have any of that. I don't have life insurance. I don't have a will. I have
Mhm.
nothing, which I probably should. But it's
And we
almost.
don't think about those things.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
I don't think about, I should. I mean, in the back of my head, I'll think about every now and then when you have a conversation with somebody and they're like, do you have, X, Y, and Z? And it's like, oh Lord, I don't. I don't have anything. Like, if I were to pass away, Jeremy would be screwed. Like, he would have nothing. But it's like things, the older you get, the more you have to kind of put in perspective, like, oh yes, I mean, that is like, we all know it's going to happen at some point,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's
Yeah.
just life, but it kind of sucks though, because you wish, everybody can live forever, you
hmm
know?
But it's also about taking accountability and responsibility for getting our stuff ready.
Yes.
I mean, we
Definitely.
really, really need to do that. I don't have one either. I don't have a living will. I don't have a last will. And I know that every time I go on a trip, that's when I think about it. And I
Right.
think, oh
Yeah.
my goodness, okay, what if this going fast? Or what if, there was some kind of a mishap? And I would like to encourage not only ourselves, but to our loved ones, just to get the affairs in order or find out what part of us is not finished yet. Like, do we have forgiveness work to do? Are there people in our lives that we haven't done forgiveness work with? Are
Yeah.
there things that we have left undone or that we haven't fully gotten to express yet? Because we don't
Right.
want to live with regrets in the human element. We really don't want to live with regrets. So it's really important to pay attention. What is our biggest fear? And let's get to it. Let's face
Yeah.
it.
And
Let's
what
face
is the
it.
fear of dying too? And like what
Right.
happens when we die or transition? Because like I'm sure a lot of people listening and you and me, I am like obsessed with those near death experiences and what they see and when they come back. And it's always like they never want to come back. They
Yeah.
are always mad when they come back and they wake up and they're like, I didn't want to come back to Earth. I
Right.
wanted to be exactly where we were because it's so peaceful and loving and fluid and you can go wherever you want and there's no human emotions involved, it's just love. There's no anger or greed or jealousy or anything like that. It's just light and love. It's just this
Mhm.
pureness and everything's like bright colors and beautiful. And then they get
Yes.
sucked back in the body to come back and they're revived and they're like, okay, I know my work's not done, but I can go back. And then they always say, I'm not scared of dying anymore
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
I've been there and it's absolutely gorgeous and like peaceful and
Yes.
warm. They always
Yes.
talk about just how loving and warm it feels. So I love listening to stories because those people, it's so similar. How can it be wrong? Right?
Exactly, exactly. And all of those things have been confirmed by what people have experienced and seen and felt. I had a really interesting thing the day that my dad died. I actually kind of knew, and it was almost like, oh, I got insight because that day I literally had a dream. This was just about a month ago. I had a dream that he was about 30 years old, just young and vibrant and healthy and well. And he was wearing a bright red shirt, and he was just sitting there enjoying food and enjoying togetherness. And I knew that he had crossed and he was in a better place. And it was such a blessing because he was in hospice and he was suffering very badly until he had finally passed. And we were praying for his passing so that he wouldn't suffer anymore. And it was just such a beautiful thing. And I knew it was time. It was time. So when I did hear the actual news later on that morning, I was like, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
He's good. He's good. He's good. It's okay. So maybe that, just to give honor to that too, that it's just really in the other realm, it can be such a beautiful experience. And it's amazing how we, like, when you see people on the other side, Brooke, and you're doing the gallery readings, do you see that they're about that age, about maybe 30s, 35, just in that young, perfect age and state?
Sometimes it depends on kind of when they passed,
Okay.
because if they look too young, it might not resonate, because if they passed in their 80s or 70s and then they're showing me in their 30s, they're not going to really understand like who that is because they passed older. But they'll
Mhm.
show me where, they're dancing around or they're jumping up and down, or they had issues with their body in this life and they don't anymore.
Mhm.
Or, they'll show me the progression of, like, say if somebody had cancer, and not all the times, but sometimes cancer can change the way that you physically look for like a
Mhm.
long time, right? For months, you can look different or lose weight and things like that. And then some other times it's super quick where it doesn't even have time to change their appearance. But if
Mhm.
they're really focusing on how they look and that they look healthy and they're not looking this way anymore, it's to prove that they are back whole and that they're not in pain and they're not suffering and they're exactly how they remembered them at their best time in their life.
Mm.
Um, and that's what's so beautiful about it, is when they come through, or if it's a child, I can tell it's a younger soul, or, somebody that passed way before their time, or
Mhm.
things that happened to them, or, it's just amazing when I get to connect with spirit. And the best feedback I can get from my clients is, my loved one was really in the room. Like, there
Mm.
was no doubt, there was no question, there was no hesitation. Like, I wasn't sure, but people are usually surprised where they're like, "Oh, I thought you might have to like get into it," and you're just like, "Such and such is here," and I'm like, "Cause they're ready to talk." Like,
Yeah.
imagine not being able to talk for so long. There's no doubt in my mind that they're there because I can see them, I can
Mm.
feel them. It's their stories, but it's the validation that they haven't left you.
Yeah.
And for somebody to give that kind of peace to somebody grieving is just, I don't even know the right word, but it's just unimaginable healing
Mm.
to prove that yes, they're physically not here, and the pain that they feel by losing their person or their loved ones, and then to validate it through somebody else that doesn't know them, it means a lot, but it just shows how strong spirit is, and
That's
that
incredible.
we do move on. There is more to this life than just physical, and when you think about it, all the planets, the sun, like
Mhm.
just like everything, like we are so small and we
Mhm.
worry about some of the dumbest shit. And it's like,
Mm.
but look at the big picture. Like, we're just like this little tiny dot in
Yeah.
this big world,
Yes. Yes.
doing the best we can for our soul in this life. Our next life might be totally different, but it's pretty amazing. And if it gives anybody
Mhm.
peace, that's what matters.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that the stories of even reincarnation too. And I know there's some of our listeners may not believe in reincarnation, but if you think about it, like I was talking to my niece the other day, and she at a very young age started playing piano and playing piano really, really, really well. And I told her, I said, you had to have been some kind of a composer, some kind of a musician in another lifetime, because you didn't have lessons, and for you to sit at a piano and go and just play this amazing music, it's just like, how do you know that? It's just innately in a person. And my mother's belief system, she had shared so many stories of the reincarnation with like, for example, if we are leaders and teachers, then we end up leading and teaching in the next lifetime and the next lifetime. And we just grow and evolve and grow and evolve. And it reminds me of a beautiful book I want to share with our listeners to find, and it's called The Old Soul's Guidebook. And it talks about the 10 different soul types that there are. And the more we get to know about ourselves and our soul type, like some are the helper type and they're here to assist and help others in the planet. Some are the creative type and they're here to create. Some are the teachers and educators and they're here to educate. Some are here to assist in building. And there's just so many different soul types. And it's just fascinating the more we can get to know ourselves and what type we are to keep on evolving and growing and learning and doing and asking and knowing. No?
Yeah, no, I want to get that book.
Yes.
Read
Oh,
the
it's an awesome book. That's my little go-to in the evening times. Yeah.
I'll have to check it out. I've never heard of it.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredible. It's incredible.
Now, do you think that people can take a little bit of, like, say you're artistic, and then in the next life be more like of an artistic healer or an artistic helper or things like that? Do you think, or does that book talk about people actually shifting what their soul is supposed to do in this life? Or do you think it mostly just stays and crosses over, but in maybe a different form?
I think a little bit of everything. I mean, as far as we're evolving and building, and let's say that somebody is learning how to be an artist at the age of 70, and then that might evolve into that next lifetime. They're an artist and also a teacher. And then maybe they go into teaching art to the angels while they're in a different realm. Who knows? It's just so
Yeah.
interesting to think about. But it's like when we see just the evolution of how different souls come into this existence, and every single soul is so different and so talented in their own unique ways. They had to have had it from somewhere, right?
Yes.
From
Yes.
another time, from
Definitely.
another time. So interesting.
It
So
really is.
interesting.
There's so much to think about and talk about. And
Oh, absolutely.
it's never ending, you know?
And I think we should always ask those questions and just find more, just really find that curiosity, have the curiosity of a child to say, how do we know? Just like the universe, how do we know? That was my biggest question I had when I was 10 years old at a Christian camp that I went to. And they're talking about, the Adam and Eve. And I said, well, how did Adam and Eve, wait, they had babies, but then wait, did they have their children have more babies together? Or is that right? Or is that wrong? Or how do we know this whole universe got here? When did it get here? How do we know it started? When did God start? And it's just like,
Yeah.
why would we have these questions?
Yeah, definitely. Because there's a lot to ask, and who really knows the answer? Just kind of
Right?
what you believe, right?
Absolutely.
In your heart.
Absolutely.
Because some of them we just don't know.
We
Like,
don't.
yeah,
We
no.
don't know. That's why I can't wait to pass.
He's not going anywhere anytime soon.
No, I'm not
Right.
going anytime soon. I'm not going anytime soon. I do the difference of wanting to die. In my young 20s, I was kind of in that really bad state and that really bad stage. And I was actually suicidal at a time in my life, years and years and years and years ago. So I know the difference, of being in that really deep, dark, dark, dark state of wanting life to end versus like now in this older part of my years. I wonder what it would be like to experience, especially hearing about the near-death experiences that people get to experience, the light and the peace, the harmony. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, you're not going anywhere. You have too much healing to
Nope.
do. You have
I
too
love
many.
life. I do. I just want to put a note out there. I love life. Rarely when I
Yes,
wake up, I'm like, thank you, God, for
she
another
does.
day. Thank you, universe, for another day. Thank you, God, for another breath. And I really am
Great.
grateful. I
Me
really am.
too.
It's so exciting to experience life. We are so, all of us and all of our listeners and all of us that are here right now listening to this and really hearing this, we are so lucky, right?
You
That
are.
we are experiencing this human existence as
Yeah,
these spiritual beings that we are. It's like, wow, we get to do this.
amazing.
We
Yeah,
get to do this,
who are we healing today? That's what,
right?
feet hit the ground. I'm grateful for my life, my family, my friends. And then you're like, all right, who do I see today? And who am I healing today? And how's it going to go? Because it's
Mhm.
always an experience, on what, like you sometimes you don't know who you're seeing, and
I
how
don't know what
to
we're gonna
help
be
them.
doing when I
Yeah,
see them, right? I have no
right,
idea. They don't know what we're doing either. And it's just
right.
a matter of just getting together, saying what is happening right now?
Yep,
What's going on right now? And then we just get right to it.
yep.
So it is such an experience of just being alive. And I think if we could just remind ourselves that, as far as the elements within us too, as far as the universe, the elements, we have the earth element. We were chosen to be on this earth. We were chosen at this time to be here. And every single human has a purpose. Every single human has a purpose,
Right.
has a reason while they're here, and God gives us that free will to choose what we want to do. But may we really take every moment that we have to make it the best that we can possibly make it. And that's my prayer for humanity, is that we just make it the best that we can make it and create this heaven on earth as it is in heaven, so it be around us.
I agree. I think
Yeah.
it's amazing what you just said. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
On earth as it is in heaven.
yes, it is.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys for listening in. And if y'all have any questions, let us know. Or maybe this gave you a different perspective of death and dying, and maybe you won't be as scared, or maybe it answered some questions for you that you might have had prior that you didn't even know that you needed answers, or that you didn't realize you actually thought about, and we answered them for you today. So, or gave you a little piece, because that's what this podcast is about, is
Amen.
giving you a little healing and a little peace on your spiritual journey. So we hope y'all have a beautiful day. We will see you next week, and namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.